was warned, don't dwell on FD8, 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 don't dwell on FD8.
Well, thanks, Nomar, and good evening, everyone. And we're glad to have you here on a rather beautiful Friday night, in midsummer. So thank you for joining us tonight. And we've got a real treat tonight. We have done as part of this speaker series, probably close to now over 80 speakers, and we're honored tonight to have for the first time someone who is repeating as one of our speakers, and someone who we had on our program as late as last month, and was so impressive in his initial discussion in terms of looking at, and looking at digital modes away from FT8 and FT4, that we sort of ran out of time, but did not run out of content. So we've invited Barry back, to talk about something that's, I think rather a specific topic, but I think something that's important to all of us, particularly if you have a real high interest in terms of looking at EmComm. And that's looking tonight at EmComm needs for digital modes. So we're gonna just sort of move right into the program. But if you missed Barry's appearance last month, he started his radio career back as K3EUI. He got his extra while he was a teenager, and he's been a ham and hooked for life, as most of us have, I think. So he's got a background in astrophysics and a career in physics and an astronomy teacher, both in high school and at Westchester University in Bryn Mawr. So he's active in Aries and Races in Chester County and other radio clubs. He's one of the 3 net controllers and net manager for the PA NBEMS PEMA network, and has brought along with him tonight a colleague, Ron NY3J, who will be helping Ron in terms of putting this presentation together. It's rather unique, okay? As Barry and I were talking, we may have practiced this, but we're doing this live. Okay, so like everything else, okay, you never know what might happen as we go tonight. But that's really part of the fun of ham radio.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for the invitation. Last month, I gave a talk on sound card digital modes. The first part of the talk, 30 minutes or so, was about the hardware sound cards. And then the next 30 minutes was on, well, how do you modulate carrier with these different sounds, AM, FM, PM. And the third part of my talk was going to be on how you use digital modes for emergency communications. And of course, I ran out of time. So we had an interesting hour plus, but I didn't get to even touch on EmComm, emergency communication. So I'm back as your designated hitter on the topic EmComm. So again, thank you. If you have questions, I would appreciate, if you have that opportunity, unmute and call out and interrupt me. I'm used to teaching 9th grade physics where my students would always interrupt me. The problem with Zoom at my end is here I'm looking at the gallery shots, and I only see about a half a dozen so live videos. Everyone else is a name and a call, and your video is muted, and I have no idea if you're even in the room listening. So if you have, some came back live right now. Thank you. But if you have questions, just call out and interrupt. I might say I'm going to cover that in 3 slides or whatever. If you don't get to ask your question, email me after the talk, K3 Echo Uniform India Barry at gmail.com. K3EUI, and my name is Barry, 2 R's. So I'll get started and we'll hope for the best here. My experience with emergency communication goes back about 10, 12 years ago when I joined our local Chester County, Pennsylvania Aries Races group. And we had some real pros in that, and I was just soaking it all up. It's a very active organization, and we support the Chester County, again, Pennsylvania, Department of Emergency Services. And I learned a whole lot about packet and all kinds of ways in which emergency traffic can be passed locally, within the county. Then a little bit later, maybe about 8, 9 years ago, I got involved with Ron and some others and learned about what you can do on the HF bands, especially 80 meters, and I joined the Pennsylvania NBEMS net. At that point, it was run by Dave Kleber out in Pittsburgh. And I thought, that's really fascinating, what you can do on 80 meters. Back then, it was actually a 40-meter net on 70, 72, or something like that. And we found that 40 meters was skipping over half the state. And we were getting relays from all over the mid-Atlantic, New York, New Jersey, even up to Maine, of stations I couldn't hear in Pennsylvania on 40 meters. We realized that's kind of nuts. We have a statewide emergency net on 40 meters, and 40 meters has a 100-mile skip zone, so we can't hear each other. So we moved to 80 meters. So I want to talk about two things tonight. 80 meters, because it's a fantastic band for regional stuff. And Ron and I are going to demonstrate an 80-meter EmComm communication if everything goes well. We've got fingers crossed. And then also talk about what you can do locally on like 2 meters, simplex and repeater. So again, thank you for the invitation. I will get started by showing you my screen share. And if I can find my sound card presentation, let's see if this comes up. All right. I don't know, I pulled this slide off the internet. I have a pickup truck. It looks an awful lot like this one. And I've had all kinds of interesting experiences mobile on emergency communications within Chester County. So what is EmComm, emergency communication? So how does it differ from normal communication as hams? Well, it's a whole lot different, because here we're interested in passing specific traffic. So what really counts for emergency communication is accuracy, 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 and maybe also speed. Because sometimes we're sending long digital messages, and we're not going to read them. I'm certainly not going to send them by CW. So we have a number of ways we can use a pretty simple sound card and a radio. Doesn't have to be very sophisticated radio, and get digital communications throughout the county or throughout, the state of Pennsylvania, or even wider. So let's get started here. What modes are popular for emergency communications? Well, on the HF bands, it's these 3 modes: Thor, MFSK, and Olivia. They're all available with the application FLDIGI, and in fact some other applications as well have them. What do they share in common? They're really easy for a sound card to create these sounds. They're constant amplitude, but they change the pitch, so it's like da 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 da, simple sine waves. And the faster you go, da 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 da, the more data per second. So Thor and multi-frequency shift King and Olivia, they all sort of, to a novice, sound alike. After you've worked these for a while, it's sort of like hearing the difference between a clarinet and a saxophone. I can almost hear these modes, and I can tell you the mode and the speed just from what it sounds like. MT63 is a little bit different. It's a phase shift keyed mode, meaning it's a different kind of modulation than Thor and MFSK and Olivia. Works really well under some circumstances. For the really, really fast stuff on like 2 meter FM, 440 FM, there's a new mode out called 8 PSK that's really fast, but really annoying to listen to, especially in headphones like I'm wearing here. Brand new set of modes coming out now. It's still in alpha test, called OFDM, Orthogonal Frequency Division Multiplex. I'll show you what that's like. They're so new and so iffy, they're not really up for grabs yet on the normal communication paths, but they seem to be very, very effective. So tonight I'm going to talk a lot about Vara, V-A-R-A, both on an HF, single sideband radio, and on FM, 2 meter 440 radio. Also Pactor III, but Pactor III involves a physical TNC, not a sound card. So I'll show you some of the stuff that I have on Pactor, but it's becoming expensive to get on Pactor, and it's really easily replaced with Vara. So again, if you have questions, just call them out. So let me talk about WinLink. I was not an experienced WinLink operator, 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. I knew what it was, but I really didn't know much about how it works. WinLink itself is a little bit controversial in that it's kind of a closed system in a way. When stations form a link to what's called a gateway has both a radio and an internet connection, and I'll show you what that means. So I could send an email to a WinLink gateway, and then if that gateway gets the message, ship it off on the internet to anywhere in the world. So it's a very nice, convenient way, for instance, for a sailboat out at sea to get email back and forth using a ham radio channel. As long as it's not used for business purposes, it works really well for that. So we have HF single sideband modes, Pactor, Vara. RDOP is another sound card mode. It's more primitive, let's say. And for the short range on 2 meter and 440 FM, Packet, of course, that's been around for 40 years, and Vara FM, which is rapidly replacing Packet because it's so much more versatile. So there are the modes. Let's talk a little bit about WinLink, how you do it. So the first thing you have to do is register your call with the WinLink.org organization. So if you just Google, WinLink register, it'll take you to the WinLink site, and you enter your call, you enter a password, and they often say, well, do you want to enter a recovery email that's not a WinLink email? Because my WinLink email would be K3EUI@winlink.org. So here I use my recovery K3EUI Barry at Gmail. And then you tell WinLink basically who you are, where you are. They don't have any personal information. I mean, they don't want, your birth date and social security number and your banking numbers. But basically they want to check out that you're who you say you are. And then you update and you send this off to the WinLink organization as an internet connection. And usually within an hour I get an email back that confirms that I am who I say I am, and I'm now got a winlink.org address, and that's the start. So there's no cost to this, but they often, every time I load WinLink, they remind me that, they would love a donation. So what's that called? I forget the expression for that. But they request a donation, but they don't require it. Okay, so WinLink, what's it all about? It's all about being able to send an email to other hams or to organizations or via what are called gateways. So the different WinLink modes or connections, it's available here on the right. Packet WinLink, Pactor WinLink, WinMore RDOP. I'm reading these, so all of these are ways that I can communicate with a WinLink ham radio operator. It's sort of like saying, if they're set up for Pactor and I'm set up for Pactor, I can do, Pactor WinLink, Packet WinLink. So I have to be consistent and pick a WinLink gateway that knows how to speak this language. I could also talk with and communicate with other hams who are not gateways. They're just, everyday mortal hams. And we can exchange email back and forth between us, but I can't send email out to anybody else other than who I'm talking to in a peer-to-peer, P2P. So you've got Pactor. I'll show you some of the examples of Pactor TNCs. We got Vara, which is just a sound card mode. You don't need anything fancy for Vara, but you do need a site license if you want to use it at high speeds. Okay, so that's just the basics. But remember, when I talk about gateways, they're hams with a radio call and a WinLink address, but they're all connected to the internet, if the internet is live, and they can forward emails all over the world. So once I get it working, I have to tell it basically, well, what's my sound card? So I brought up Vara as an example. So here's the Vara FM, and I click on, orient for my station. And, oops, I see someone wants to admitted. Let me click that. And I have to tell it, what's my sound card? So in each case, your sound card is something you're familiar with connected to your computer. And you adjust your input, your output device, your drive level. That's really important because like any of these digital modes, you don't want too much or too little audio, especially on single sideband, because the amount of audio is the amount of power. And I can show you what that means. So, you know, it's just organization here. Now, when I begin the WinLink session, I start out by just clicking on RMS Express. In fact, this is an old one from a while back. It already knows my call, K3EUI. So I go over here and I check, all right, now what am I going to do? I want to start a new session, and what do I want to pick? So I have a choice here of open session. Over on the left here, it's just like any mail, you know, setup. What's in my inbox? What have I read? What's in my outbox to send? Things that I've already sent, things I've saved, blah, blah, blah. So it just keeps track of my mail. The important thing is over here that I have to begin by talking to someone else on a ham radio channel. So once I make a decision of what I'm going to do, what kind of session, then I create a new message. So here is a message format. I just click new message, and this comes up. Who do I want to send it to? So tonight I'm going to be sending to Ron on 80 meters. So I put in his call, NY3J, and I even CC it back to myself. I can choose, if Ron is a WinLink gateway, to send it as a WinLink message. We could also do a radio only, or what we're going to do tonight is peer-to-peer, meaning just ham operator to ham operator, and we're going to exchange emails just between the two of us. Subject, just give it a name. So what I'm going to send Ron tonight, well, about 10 minutes, is I'm going to get on 80 meters, and we're going to hope this works. You folks, if you have 80 meter radios, can probably hear us, because 80 meters at night, pretty easily you can hear stations in Philadelphia.
Question.
We're both, yes.
I might have missed this in the very beginning. Where is your location? Where are you located?
I'm in Philadelphia, just west of Philly.
Okay.
Westchester, Pennsylvania, about 20 miles west of Philly. So Ron's up in Ben Salem, North Philly. And
Okay.
we're
Excellent.
both on 80 meters, so we can hear each other. At least we did an hour ago. And you'll probably hear both of us. We're both at about 50 watts, low, 140-foot, you know, horizontal dipoles. So I suspect you're going to hear us fine.
Okay, so here's my question. I mean,
Yes.
This is my heart, my passion.
Yes.
So I set up the WinLink, and I'm the EmComms in the area district, Bergen County District Coordinator. Our problem is that we can do only Vara FM. I'm trying to find an RMS station that's that's HF at 80
Sure.
meters
Sure.
in the Bergen County area. So I'm curious.
Why do you need it in the Bergen County area?
So I'm able to hit it. So if you're in Philly,
Wait a minute. On 80 meters at night, you have a range of 500 miles.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping I can hit the nearest station.
Why?
The only one I knew about is in Long Island. So where is the one that you're going to try to attempt to get to? Where's that located?
I'm not going to go to a gateway tonight because that's too iffy.
Okay,
so I'm just going to go to Ron, about 40 miles from me. We can talk after the net because I see what you're aiming at.
Right.
And my comment would be on 80 meters, you've got the world. You don't need to go 80 meters to a station in your own county. That's kind of a waste.
Yeah, Jim, this is Gordon W2TTT. I'm sorry, Barry. What Jim's referring to is he's looking for a VHF station that has an HF gateway.
Got it.
Reachable from Bergen County. That's the problem.
Got it. So you got to get someone to volunteer in Bergen County to be a gateway. Yeah. All right, let me keep going. So I understand that. So what I'm going to send to Ron is a form that's called an American Red Cross form. American Red Cross designs these. WinLink has all these forms in its own software. So if I send Ron an American Red Cross, ARC, Daily Shelter Report, which is a text file, when I send the data, that data is going to go to Ron, and Ron's going to insert that data into his American Red Cross Daily Shelter Report form, and poof, the whole form is going to come up populated with all the information I send. So in other words, I don't send the whole form. I'm just sending Ron the data and saying, Ron, it's an American Red Cross form. That's the beauty of this. All these templates are already built into the software. So this is what it's going to look like, an American Red Cross Daily Shelter Report. We use these all the time in Chester County, Pennsylvania, when we're assigned to a shelter. And I've been assigned to the Westchester University shelter. I was there It's about 4 or 5 years ago when they had a terrible ice storm, and half the county lost electric power. A lot of families needed a place to stay that was warm, so we opened up 3 or 4 big shelters in high schools or colleges, wherever we could, and I was assigned to Westchester University. So I would send one of these American Red Cross shelter report forms back to W3EOC, that's the county emergency operations center, and I could do that on 2 meters, 440, however I could get the information back to the EOC. They would collect these, print them out, and give them to the American Red Cross officials at the county location. And this is next to the 911 room, so it's very convenient. So I could have also done it by picking up a cell phone, but this is far more efficient to send the data in a form. So the American Red Cross is what we found is very, very useful. The ARC creates these, they modify them, and they're part of the WinLink infrastructure. There are all kinds of forms that are useful to send: severe weather reports, ICS forms, even ARRL radiograms, although I've never sent one of those in an emergency. So all of these different forms are already part of the system here. So there's a whole bunch of PEMA and FEMA forms, general Medicare forms, and so forth. There's like 100 forms in here. And every month there's something else that's kind of possibly you might want to use. I'm looking for the ARRL stuff. Radiograms here, yeah. All right, so let's say, related to the question, let's say I want to get a gateway rather than Ron, so I could get out an email to somewhere else in the world. And I don't have internet capability. I've got a radio. So what I might want to do is connect my radio to another radio operator who is a gateway, meaning they're recognized by WinLink. And here's a form that pops up that says, well, at this time of day, with the solar cycle the way it is, here's the WinLink recommendation, who I might contact from where I live, near Philadelphia. So it lists these different call letters, what frequency they set their radio on. Now, they don't own this frequency, right? But this is where they're listening. So if I want to connect to AC2SV, at this moment, it's about 143 miles away. There's the bearing. Reliability, 87%, meaning I know I'm going to hear him. AC2SV, they operate at 2300 hertz bandwidth on the mode called Vara. It's just a software. So if I clicked right now and click on this and set up my radios, I would bet if I got off Zoom, I could hit AC2SV in about 10 minutes, unless AC2SV is already busy as a gateway talking with someone else. So here's all the choices that WinLink is recommending. Mostly it's on 80 meters. Why? Because 80 meters this time of day is pretty darn reliable. That's why I sort of joked, you don't need someone 10 miles away. You might do better with someone, 50 miles away. But once you're into the system, I could send an email to anywhere in the world. So this is an example of what's a suggested connection point. All of these are gateways, meaning they have internet capability. So that's Vara HF single sideband. So how about Pactor? Well, there are fewer and fewer Pactor stations because you need a real expensive modem to get on this. It's not a sound card mode. Here's W3JY. I know him well. He's just 10 miles from me or so. What does it say? 12 kilometers from me. He's a good friend. So he's sitting on 3591 at the moment, I think. But he can operate Pactor III, Pactor II, Pactor 1. So he's not listing himself as a Vara connect point. He's listing himself as a Pactor. So all of these signals, all these stations, have Pactor modems. All right. Reliability, 99%. Yeah, I could almost look out my window and see Joe. So all these different connections are possible. And you'll notice they're farther and farther away, or they're on maybe 40 meters now. So 40 meters, 700 miles away, KZ5ED. I could probably hit that station too. When you get down to a path quality of about 50-50, the chances are you might be able to get them, might be noisy. So you can look at different locations, different frequencies, but all these are Pactor capable stations. How about 2 meter packet? That was just mentioned. So Packet, I was on Packet almost 40 years ago, and I just got tired of it for a whole variety of reasons. Um, there are a number of Packet gateways. They announce themselves here. Here's one that's just a few miles from me, N3MEL-10. He's sitting right now on 145.010. If I want to connect to him on 1200 baud Packet, I put my radio on that. It's not like a repeater. We're simplex here. And I should be able to hit him using the Packet 1200 baud. Normally, Packet, you think a TNC. Yeah, that'll work. I have some in my basement I haven't used for years. But also there's some sound card modems now that work just as well, in fact, might say better, than the physical TNC. So Packet is still available, but I wouldn't say on the way out, but slowly being replaced. Sort of like my Chevy 3-speed pickup truck. It finally bit the dust. Maybe I shouldn't say that about Packet. I always wear headphones except when I'm operating Packet. Then I can't stand it. It gives me a headache, so I'm not a Packet guru. But there are others in the area who are. All right, Vara FM. Oh, man, this is so cool. It sounds a lot better. And it works a whole lot better than Packet. I mean, yeah, it's better. So here's N3MEL again, -10. Oh, on a different frequency. So this is his Vara gateway. And in fact, he says wide, meaning up to 6 kilohertz. Meaning, man, really, really high speed because we're not on a repeater here. And all these other stations. So you see, they're pretty close to me, within 100 kilometers. Depends on my 2-meter radio and antenna. Some of these may be horizontally polarized too. I'm not sure here. Some are narrow, some are wide. But it gives me the distance, the bearing. I could probably hit a half dozen of these right now. Here's WA3ERQ. That's up in the other direction. Seeing if I recognize any calls here. No. So if you have a local FM Vara gateway, like in your county, wow, that's a great advantage, and maybe that was what was being discussed.
Barry, can I point out one toward the bottom, the AL0Y-3?
Oh,
that's
Ali.
That's the one very close to us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I should have recognized that call. I can't hit that from here in Philly, but if I could, with a kilowatt and a big beam, we could do a great demonstration.
And the second one down is me at 37 kilometers from you, W2KBF10.
I could probably hit you, but I'm not set up for tonight. Okay, thank you. Very good. So do you want to add anything about narrow, Carl?
Me? Well, we're only doing narrow because I want the group to learn to walk before they run. We're having enough trouble getting people running with the 500 hertz wide stuff.
Okay. Yeah, so narrow on FM means you're limited to, let's say, about 2 kilohertz worth of audio. Normal, like human voice stuff. When you go to wide, first, it doesn't fit in a repeater. You're almost 6 kilohertz wide, which you think, well, that's not so wide, but it is on FM. So it means you're taking up more deviation. If you look at 6 kilohertz bandwidth and the typical deviations, that doesn't easily fit like between repeaters. But the wide is really fast. So let me go backwards. My son had one of these back in the 1990s, and he got on Pactor I. Wasn't for WinLink purposes. He just loved to operate keyboard mode. He had a primitive EmComm single sideband rig, and he just loved the keyboard all over the world with Pactor I. This TNC also did RIDI and some other things too, even CW. So he got a contact once in Argentina. He was thrilled. Our antenna was just some wire in a tree. Simple gadget here. And like, whoa, this was kind of fun. And he gets this contact in Argentina, and the fellow on keyboard now, this isn't voice, gives him a signal report and what he's running. And the guy then says, and this was in English, I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Argentina Air Force, and I'm a test pilot. I test blah, 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 jets. What do you do for a living? And my son comes back. He says, keyboard. I'm 13 years old. I'm in the 6th grade. I don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up. So it was just a funny moment to eavesdrop and watch that. Of course, my son was giggling because, he was talking to this lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. Lieutenant colonel is talking to this little kid. Pactor 1 was amazing back in the 1990s. It got better, and it also got more expensive. And so as it got better, they limited the technology to one licensed company, and that was SCS company in Germany. These are amazing. I have one of these. Just looks like this. They're phenomenal. You can be a klutzy operator and still get Pactor messages all over the world. It's just amazing technology, but new, they're more than $1,000. Pactor 2, then Pactor 3 came out, which was really fast. Very complicated modulation. It's still legal, but you need one of these fancy gadgets to get it going. It's proprietary. So what does that mean? It means you have to pay big bucks to use it. They're not licensing the hardware to other companies to make simple ones like, MFJ and all. Pactor 3 requires the special TNC, but look at all the possible gears here. If you've got a weak connection, noisy, it uses speed 1, gear 1. And as you get better and better signal to noise, it ramps up. And of course, these are faster speeds. So Pactor 3, you can hear it change, like switching gears on a car. Here's what the spectrum looks like. I didn't take this, but I got this one off the internet. It's very sharp, very efficient, but it's also 2 kilohertz wide. What does that mean? Well, Pactor can get a bad reputation if it's operating in the middle of the CW portion of the band. Sometimes you hear Pactor stations that are pretty wide where they shouldn't be. But it's very efficient. Here's what the newer modems look like, and they're called Pactor 4. They're not legal yet in America. Our baud limit is 300, and these are 1800 baud. But from what I hear, I don't have one, I don't use one, but what I hear, these are just amazing. They're also like $1,500 for the equipment. Pactor 4 speeds, really, really fast for an HF radio. I don't want to talk about what all these mean. That's another hour talk. But the Pactor modem decides the speed, not the operator. So once you make a connection, the information receiving and information sending station, they set the speed of which the data goes. So it works if the conditions get lousy, and it goes faster if the conditions get better. You're just in this driver's seat watching. It's like autopilot. Here's some Pactor stations all over the world. I forget the date when I pulled this up, but Pactor is great to send messages all over the world. I wouldn't use it to send messages, 30 miles away from Philadelphia. So let's talk about Vara. Vara is only a couple years old. I've written many letters to Jose, the author of this. He's a really interesting guy. Now, this is in English because I don't speak Spanish, but our emails are fascinating. I go technical questions to him about Vara, and he answers them in English, and I've learned so much from that guy. He's a genius, and his team is really very effective. They've produced some really quality software, and all it needs is a simple sound card. Simple. I've gotten Vara contacts on a $3 little USB plug-in card on HF. You don't need a very sophisticated one. Sound card. The software is superb. It has many gears, and I'll show you what that's like. And in a couple minutes, Ron and I, hopefully, will do a demonstration of Vara HF. There's Vara HF and Vara FM, 2 different applications. Because at FM, it's a completely different arrangement. You're not dealing with single sideband, multipath, noise, QSB, all this stuff. If you've got an FM simplex, or we even do Vara FM on an ordinary analog voice repeater, works well. Oh, get the repeater's permission before you do that. So Vara user interface, you get the coolest gauges here to see what's happening. So I'm going to show you my gauge while I'm sending Ron an EmComm message in about 5 minutes here. Vara interfaces. So the WinLink Vara mode on HF has 2 bandwidths. And you tell Vara HF before you even make a connection, I want to limit my bandwidth to 500 hertz. I want to play nice among the CW operators and other operators and wherever I'm going to operate. So it limits the modes to those under 500 hertz. So you're not greedy. If you're willing to go to a wider bandwidth, and if you're legally in the wider bandwidth mode part of 80 meters, you can use these modes. And if you've got a clear channel, you can go way, way up in speed. I've never gotten this kind of speed on HF, but I've gotten it above 2,000. So here, gear 10 or so. So the levels 1, this is like CW speed. I could send CW at this, 18 bits per second. FSK meaning it's like a RTTY signal. When they get more sophisticated, they go to PSK, phase shift, 4 of them. And more carriers, more speed. So as it ramp up, you either got more carriers or higher symbol rates or a different form of modulation. 32 QAM is like unbelievable. It's a combination of many different types of AM and phase shift all in once. So it's a very complicated structure. Vara HF single sideband, and they're up to version 4. Here's the FM speeds. The FM speeds are even faster. Why? Because you're not dealing with bandwidth limits, and you're also, you have the advantage. There's hardly any noise on FM. So some of these are really, really fast. So I just tried something. It was sort of quasi-legal. I sent myself a message with 2 different radios right here. So I was on 2-meter simplex, not on a repeater. And I sent myself a message on Vara FM. And it was just amazing. Wait a minute, here, Vara FM. And I got it up to this. What is this? Gear 11. 256 QAM, 12,750. Now this is bits per second, not bytes per second. Anyway, it's really fast. Well, my 2 antennas were only about 10 feet apart, so I have no interference on FM simplex. And if I have time, I'll show you that because I have that still set up right here. So the sample RX window, this is what I got about 2 hours ago. I thought, let's see how fast I can send myself an American Red Cross message. I'd never done this before, let alone thinking about, saving the screens and putting on Zoom. So what is this telling me? All these little boxes are sort of like what QAM is all about. Each box has data at a certain location. And if the dots all fall squarely within one box or another box, it says, oh, I get it, I got it, go even faster, go faster. Until finally the data gets kind of scrambled here and says, no, slow down. But this is the highest speed I can do on Vara narrow. 12,750 BPS. So I forget, I sent a, what was it here? A 41 kilobyte file in like 20 seconds. It's like, whoa, that was fast. But again, FM simplex, my 2 antennas are only 10 feet apart. In Philadelphia now, we have a group trying to learn how to do this with HTs and a signal link. Man, that's cool. Because an HT with, 3 watts and a signal link, you could send data back and forth to, let's say, a central station in Philadelphia, maybe 5 miles away. Very, very nice. So, here it is. Here's my 55 kilobyte file sent in 23 seconds. So I forgot I recorded this. 140,000 bytes. That's bytes, not bits, per minute. Like, that's fast. All right. So, at this point, I'm going to stop share. Okay, I'm going to turn on my radio. I've got to get this set up. And Ron knows we're on 3584 VFO on upper sideband. For those of you that have a HF 80 meter antenna, don't transmit, but you can listen on 3584. So I'm going to see if I can get this thing going. First, I'm going to minimize my Zoom. I'm going to bring up all right, I minimize that. I'm going to bring up my Zoom windows, which I temporarily hid so I didn't get totally confused. Ron, I think I'm all set up here with Vara. Now I'm going to go to screen share and turn it back on. I hope this works. Again, I've never done this before. Why didn't that work? You guys, Carl, do you see my Vara window, or what do you see?
No, I just see you.
Yeah, okay, so I still have to get... I had this working perfectly a little while ago. I've got to go to Zoom. Oh, I see. It's minimized. Oh, I get it. I see what I did wrong. All right. I'm not so good with Zoom yet. I've been practicing. All right, so I want to share screen. And I want to share my screen. I think this will work. All right, let me get this out of the way. Now do you see what I see, Carl?
You're good now.
Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this. Okay, so I hope this is going to work. So I'm on live 3584.000 upper sideband data mode. And I'm going to go here to settings. So what I did was create in my outbox a message, K3EUI, that's me. I'm sending it to NY3J, parentheses, peer-to-peer, meaning Ron's not a gateway, at least not tonight here. And what I'm going to send him is a daily shelter report from Westchester University. It's just fake make-up data, but it could have been real. So that's in my outbox. So if I can get a connection, to Ron, and he accepts my connection, that's called our handshaking, then I'll be able to send Ron an email, and when he gets it, or if he gets it, it will populate his American Red Cross forum, and he'll see all my data. Ron, I'm going to send a tune first before I send a connect, and let's just see if you hear me. So I go into my radio's an ICOM 7610. It's sitting here next to me. I don't even have my amplifier on tonight. I'm going to hit tune, hope I get an output. Yeah, so there's about 50 watts. I'm going to increase the audio a little bit. So there's about 50 watts on 3584. Now, I said that's my VFO dial. The tune is 1500 hertz audio. So the actual RF, if you want to tune me in, is 3584 plus 1.5. So my actual RF, if you had a receiver and a signal analyzer or something, my RF is on 3585.5. Let me turn that off. Let me close this. So this is live right now, and I hear the audio on my radio and the speaker up here, and you maybe hear the static from that. So Ron, can you give me a tune at you know where? All right, so I see Ron, and I hear Ron, and I can hear Ron out of this. Let me take the camera off, and I'll show you. Here's my radio. Well, there's a monitor of my radio, so that's what I'm going to be hearing, and you're going to be hearing. Okay, you can turn the tune off, Ron. All right, so I want to send Ron the email. So what I'm going to do is say to Ron, I want to connect to you. So what I do over here on this window is I have it set up, sending it to NY3J on the center frequency 3585.5. That's the RF. My VFO, however, is 3584, and so is Ron's. So when I click start, if this works, I'm going to ask Ron to please connect to me in the language called Vara. So let's give it a try. And if it works, you guys should see what I see here on my monitor. Now, you're not going to see what Ron sees because we can't be both, share screen. But if Ron connects to me, you'll see this VU meter go up and down with Ron's modulation. And finally, you'll start to see this graph show how our connection is being made. So let's go ahead and do it. Look at that, we're connected already. Now hopefully you're hearing the sounds on my microphone. I'm going to turn it up as loud as I can. We are handshaking right now. Our Vara modems are talking to each other. Oh, did you just hear the tones change? So I'm saying to Ron, oh, what happened? We just oh, Ron, my outbox is empty. How did that do? Oh, wait a minute. I really goofed because I practiced sending to Ron earlier. I knew I'd mess up. All right, so I've got to move this back to my outbox. See, even I made a rookie error there. All right, so now I've got Ron's message back in here. So let me try start again. All right, we're connected again. Ron's signal, by the way, is a little over S9 here. And we're about 40 miles apart on 80 meters. All right, so we're in peer-to-peer connected mode. I can hear from the sound how the handshaking is going. So it again rejected it because I think what happened is I sent Ron this message earlier, and his software is pretty smart and it knows, I already got that message, dude. So I'm going to bring it back up. I'm going to move it first to my outbox, and I'm going to click on it and just change the message a little. Just say here, hello, and repost it with a new number. Let me see if this works, Ron. Yeah. Okay, so I made another rookie error. I already sent this Ron message at 6 o'clock to see if it would work. So I'll turn the audio down so it really sounds loud even in my headphone. So I'm going to connect to Ron again. The connect is sweet. Dee-dee-dee-dee.
Yeah, that's a much better level.
Okay, yeah, it's little cheap speakers here distorting. Now keep an eye on what's happening over here. This constellation window. It's testing what's the best speed. What gear should we get in? It's like the car is approaching a hill. Let's see if my data goes now. Not yet. Oh. It's trying to ramp up in speed now. I heard that gear change. We're at gear 8, 730 BPS. I heard it change again. Keep an eye down here if you can see this. I'm up to gear 9. The graph is growing, meaning faster speeds. I'm not touching anything. About 50 watts output. It didn't like the high speed. See, if Ron sends me a, no, I didn't get it, slow down, my software will slow down. Let me let this finish. It's not a great speed right now. It's down to 500 BPS. Over here you see this green bar. I'm almost sending him the whole form. So I'll let this finish. So I can tell from the sound what gear we're in. But you keep an eye on this graph, the bits per second. We just ramped up again. I'm through. So now I got to disconnect from Ron, unless Ron has a message for me. He may. I never know. Ron's got all sorts of messages for me. Nope, I think we're finished. Uh-oh. He's going to send me something. I knew he would. So now I'm receiving a message from Ron. I have no idea what he's doing.
It's an acknowledgement, Barry.
Oh, okay.
I have it automatically sent.
Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, listen to that. Hear that CW? So here's one of the questions about WinLink. Is this legal? You guys didn't know what we were talking about. You heard my CW at the end. So let me turn the sound down. So one of the interesting things is the messages being sent, in a language that's not. Let me close this, close that, stop share. Let me go back to share my my screen. Let me stop for a minute because I'm sure some of you may have a question on what happened. Besides making 2 or 3 rookie errors, that was all my fault. The software handled it beautifully. The peopleware is what messed up. And on 80 meters, Ron and I had S9 signals, and my noise level right now is about an S5. We're both on low dipoles. As soon as the sun goes down, 80 meters goes long. So, by 9 o'clock, in fact, right now, I can pick up W1AW at, you might listen for them, 3581.5 CW. They're like 30 over 9 here in Philadelphia, the W1AW CW bulletins. So where is it legal for us to do this? Well, there's a certain range where sort of the WinLink folks hang out just to play nice. Some don't play nice and they move So I won't talk more about that. But it's a form of communication that's really, really efficient because the software is so good. If I mess up, right away I get disconnected. Or if I'm trying to send Ron an email and it has a postage on it, and Ron already got that from me 4 hours ago, he just says, "Nope, I already got that. Don't waste your time, Barry." So Vara is just, I'm impressed with how well it works, and it's up to like version 4. Let me stop talking. So that was an example of an 80 meter. I sent Ron. Oh, Ron, I can set up so you can share. Do you want to share that American Red Cross form that you just got?
Oh, yeah.
Multiple participants can share. So I just let you share. So if Ron knows how to do this. Oh, by the way, a couple years ago, Ron was my Elmer. Ron taught me everything I know about WinLink.
Point to where I have to share it.
So I let everyone share. So you should be able to share your.
Just click share screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Just to prove it really worked.
Do you see it?
No. So if you share screen, when you say share screen, then you have to go, here it comes, yes. Yep, there it is. So this is the message. Now it's just, all fake data. This is the message that Ron received in just a couple of minutes, right? It's just fake data to fill in the blanks here. Okay, you can unshare, Ron, thank you. So that's the beauty of WinLink. We can share the data, and Ron already had the form called the American Red Cross Daily Shelter Report. So any kind of form that we already share in common, we just send the data, and the software is smart enough to say, pull up the American Red Cross Daily Shelter Report and fill in the data. Then Ron has it on his browser. He can print. It prints out, and he can hand it to the township manager. So that's the way we do it in Westchester, PA. If we're exchanging shelter reports at W3EOC, there's an operator more likely on 2 meters than 80. And they print it out and hand it to the 911 supervisor and says, here's what we're seeing from Westchester Shelter. The data is 5 minutes old. So let me stop and see if there are any questions on what Ron and I just demonstrated.
Quick question. Is there error correction? I noticed a typo that could have been sent initially like that, or?
Yes, that was my bad typing on the form, yeah. WinLink is phenomenal because it's in other words, if I sent a piece, like a frame of data, and Ron didn't get it, he sends to my Vara, nope, didn't get it, send that frame again. So every time I know it went, watching that window with the monitors, the speedometers, this is error proof as much as it can be, yeah. So there's error correction built into Vara. Otherwise, it would be useless. Someone said, why don't you just get on Morse code and send with CW? Are you kidding? How long would it take me to send CW at my sloppy 20 words a minute with a hand key? We're not going to do that. Someone else said, why don't you get on a microphone and just tell the EOC what you need? I said, no, because sometimes it's sensitive information, and I can't talk that fast. So we gave up CW and using voice. Now, voice is good for, evacuate. That's it. We wouldn't use voice to send piles of information. Good question. No other questions? Have any of you ever operated the mode called Vara, either on an FM or on HF? So Carl's nodding. Vincent's saying, so Carl, okay, Gordon. Yeah, so just quick comments. Vara, I mean, there's a learning curve, and I'm still a little above the rookie stage. I mean, really not much above the rookie stage. I just made some rookie errors. But Vara software is just, I think, amazing. I've written to Jose a couple times making suggestions, and he writes back. He says, thank you. We'll consider that. Carl, Vara, any comments?
No, I agree. It's great. I've been using WinLink for about 10 years. And before Vara, there was WinMore, which was the good free modem. And Vara is a great advance over WinMore.
Yeah, I had a comment.
Okay.
Gordon?
Go ahead, Gordon.
All right. We actually got got Jose and the development team to kind of play with the timing parameters such that it could deal with the key up delay through the repeater and the hang time of the repeater. Now, we made some adjustments on the machine, but when you're running through an analog repeater, data was getting, dropped off because the repeater had to come back up. It was dropping down. And so they kind of relaxed some timers. We relaxed some timers. Everybody was happy.
I'm laughing and I'm smiling because it happened to us last Thursday night. And we have about a dozen operators in Chester County, and we're using our own internal UHF repeater. And especially if you're using a signal link. A signal link, the PTT mechanism is Vox, meaning it takes audio to get the signal link to trip, to like close the PTT of your mic circuit. And the setting on the signal link, the delay knob, is really critical. I got it to work here on my two radios when I set both signal links to 7 o'clock. That's not 0, but it's not, the normal delay. Because it's data, response, data, response. You need some time for the repeater to say, okay, this station goes off, fast chime, who's next coming in? And the repeater we have in Westchester is designed by an absolute guru. I won't tell you his name or his call, but he's just a genius. And man, the chime comes on as soon as one releases. So you have to find a repeater that has a pretty quick turnaround time. These aren't designed to be on FM analog repeaters. It's just sound. But it's just amazing if you can get the timing right. Now, it works a whole lot better. I mean, a whole lot better if you're not using a signal link Vox. If you have any kind of a modem, and a sound card that uses a PTT by a COM port or a CAT port, or these new DRA modems use a completely different PTT mechanism. The signal links are a little tricky to set up to work on a repeater. Not impossible. Much, much easier if you're on simplex. Then you're not worried about the repeater.
Yeah, Jim may have some more on that, but the key for us was to make sure that we made the kind of adjustments you did on the user side, but also to increase the hang time on the repeater. Now, we had that ability to do that, and we're using a standard Yaesu Vertex, probably a version 2 repeater, and in FM mode. I mean,
Beautiful question. I wrote to Jose and I said, please, 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 because so many of us are trying this on repeaters, have a mechanical, delay or, on the software, Vara, so you can set the Vara delay to, let's say, half a second. Make it really long. Half a second, then, you're slowing down. So it's a bit, 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 silence, silence, blah, 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 silence, 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 blah, and he didn't want to do that. I said, that would change our life if, we could set the delay in the software, not in our signal link. And it was a polite letter in English, and I got a polite letter back that said, no way, baby.
Yeah, well, I mean, we got a similar thing, but he did make some changes where the software has a more relaxed mode, but what we noticed it was subtly version over version, but as I said, but even if your first transmission, gets gobbled up and lost, by having a long hang time on the repeater, you remove that problem from there on out.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to close Vara HF.
So you guys are talking a lot on the technical aspect of it. I'm going to talk about more on the application of it. I do a weekly thing through that repeater, it's a 146610. So anybody that's in the Bergen County Passaic area that wants to learn this and learn the forms and learn anything about it, reach out to me and we can practice over that repeater. It's been working fine so far. Once in a while we do have a few quirks, and Ollie fixes it pretty quickly. But it's been working great, and I do it every Wednesday evening. I have like an AriesNet, and after that I send WinLink messages, and there's another guy in New York that does it on Thursday. So if you want to practice and get familiar with the forms and you need somebody to do it with, I'm happy to do it with you. I could do it a P2P, or we can go through the repeater. Thank you.
Okay, what I'm going to do quickly here, if I can, is send myself an email, K3EUI to K3EUI, on 2 meters FM simplex. So then I don't have the repeater to deal with. So give me a minute to just type up something fast here. In fact, if I can, I'm going to send the ARC attachment to myself. So you guys keep talking while I do this. Someone pick it up if you have a question or
Gordon,
comment.
speaking of your technical, talking about that station, is it going to be in the process of being moved soon, or you don't have a date on that yet?
No, the 6-1 repeater will remain in place until they they decide to remodel with a wrecking ball the nature center, at which point it'll be relocated probably to the north end of Garrett Mountain for a period of time. It may then end up either on Oldham Road at a tower site not yet built, or back at the new nature center when they rebuild it.
Yeah, roger that. So there's no ETA on it. There's no date yet. That's my question. So we're good for a while.
Yes,
Barry,
sir.
your RF signal was 20 over 9 up here in northern New Jersey. This is Steve, WI2W.
That was 50 watts with a homemade dipole.
Very good signal.
All right, so let me see here if I'm live. I have to turn the sound up. All right, now is this live? Do you see what I see?
Yes.
All right, so let me see. I'm on Vara FM settings. Narrow, looks good. Maybe a little loud. Do you hear that? I'll squelch it. All right, so what I'm going to do now, I have no idea this is going to work. I've got 2 computers, 2 radios, 2 modems, one of me, 1 monitor here on Zoom. So I want to try to send myself, K3EUI to K3EUI, a peer-to-peer email. It's an email with an ARC attachment. What you guys are going to see on Zoom is everything I see on my monitor. Let's see if this works. It's working. Now, we're not on 80 meters. There's no noise. Signal to noise, 24, 28 dB. Look at this. So let's see what our speed is here. Here comes the data. Now I'm sending the data.
Is this on Simplex?
Yes. I'm only at gear 2, so I'm distorted somewhere, but you know. That's it. So yeah, I wasn't going through a repeater. Would never work this fast. So let me now go to my inbox. And this is just what opened. You see what I see here? So I received from myself, I think that's legal, right? K3EUI, K3EUI. So I used about 1 watt, the lowest I could get on 2 meter radios. And the 2 antennas are out in the backyard 10 feet apart. I was hoping I didn't have so much power I'd burn out my other radio. So I sent myself the ARC form, and that's what I said. Let me stop share. So as you can see, on 2 meter for local, if you can work on simplex, it's really fast. You could set the signal link delays to almost nothing. You're not worried about repeater resetting. Now in our case, instead of making the repeater hang time longer, we said to the repeater owner, can you make it real short? And he did, and it works. So it goes bzz, bum, bzz, bum. As fast as I can do it on simplex. We've sent this through the repeater system. And it's a linked repeater with 3 repeaters. I mean, it's really unbelievable. So we can use an FM analog repeater with a WinLink mode. Now, we don't do that. Why don't we do that? Most of the emergency work that I've been associated with in Westchester County, we have an emergency message that originates, let's say, at the governor's office or with the county Department of Emergency Services, DES. They have a message that they want to send out through the hams. Now, they also do it with all kinds of other, methods, even the internet. but the hams get it just the same time other people, get it. And how do we do it? We send it out on the repeater using FLDIGI. FLDIGI is not a linked mode. It's just one message goes out, and anyone who hears that sound can get the message, like an American Red Cross form. So we can send a message from a central location, W3EOC, next to the 911 room, out over 2-meter repeater, 440 repeater, or even simplex, to, let's say, 20 different hams at 20 different township buildings, all within 25 miles of the EOC, and we can all hear each other on 2-meter simplex, or most of us hear each other. If we go via the repeater, certainly we can all hear each other. So in the time it takes to send a message to one ham, like WinLink, we're sending a message to all 20 at once. So for that, we can't use WinLink. WinLink is a one-to-one and a store and forward. So WinLink has a lot of advantages, but FLDIGI, so let me screen share and talk about FLDIGI, then we'll finish the night.
Can I just make one comment? You can send multiple emails out by creating a group. So I could send them to all 25 at the same time.
On peer-to-peer?
Oh, peer-to-peer, no.
Yeah, see, so in other words, I demonstrated that I can talk to Ron peer-to-peer. Now, yes, if I could get to a gateway, then we could send them out on the internet all over. Okay, what if the internet's down? Then I'm lost. So with FLDIGI, we're sending it from one radio to 20 radios at once, independent of the internet. And that's why we don't use, let me close this down. That's why we don't use WinLink for virtually any of the stuff we do now.
This suggests a question, if I may, Barry. You know how in Packet, let me ask you this way: is there a snoop mode for RF, like we have in, you can listen to any packet, right? FLDIGI, anybody can listen. What about Vara?
No. And if I told you it, I'd have to kill you. No, literally. I mean, yeah. So do you see what I see now? Am I screen sharing again?
No, not yet.
All right, so I got to go back to share screen. This is so complicated. All right, now do I have it up?
Now you're good.
Okay, so let's just quickly reverse and talk about another completely different type of emergency communication technique. It's not really a mode. FLDIGI, Fast Light Digi. It's often called NBEMS. That came out about 12 years ago. Narrow Bandwidth Emergency Message System, Service, Society. I don't know. We don't know what the S means. And a lot of it's not narrow bandwidth anymore. But this is the software called FLDIGI. So when you get FLDIGI, let me go to Slideshow and make it bigger. Okay, is that big now? So FLDIGI first, it's free. Next, it works on everything, any system. The guy who writes it's a good personal friend, Dave Fries. He's just an amazing programmer. I don't know how he has anything else except programming, but he comes out with all kinds of new versions every week. And he's a wonderful person. Just he's fun to talk to. It's updated regularly. Did I say it's free? Doesn't require much memory. It even works on older Windows 7 laptops and stuff. It does not do Packet, Pactor, or all the JT modes. It's designed for emergency communications, but you can also use it to chat to people. So the main program is called FLDIGI, sound card program. FLMSG, FL Message, allows me to send a message like the American Red Cross form. So FL Message already knows all these templates. And there's like 100 different templates that it already, has in its memory. FLAMP is a slightly different way of sending a message in blocks, sort of the way WinLink does. So at the end of an FL message, it sends a little checksum, like here's a combination to my envelope. If you get the combination, you can open the envelope and you get the message. It's not an ARQ method. It's just, here's the whole thing. Did you get it? And you know if you got it because it opens. FLAMP is a way of taking a big, long message and breaking it up into smaller blocks or envelopes. Each envelope has its own checksum. So if I send a FLAMP, and it might be 100 blocks, maybe some long spreadsheet or something, you might get, 90% of it, but you're missing 10 blocks. So you write back to me, FLDIGI, hey, send blocks 1 through 10. I missed them. I get that. I just send you blocks 1 through 10. So FLAMP is a very wonderful way of sending information where you don't want to waste time sending the same data over and over and over again. I just send the data that the other person's missing. FLRig controls your rig, FLLog obviously. So these files are what are called wrapped for error detection. It's a completely different setup than WinLink, but I can send weather reports, ARC forms, ICS, spreadsheets, anything you want, you can put it. We have a lot of local weather forms in Chester County. So here's a severe weather report that's already part of the FLDIGI system. I fill out the data here, I say auto send, and it sends this on whatever mode I want to use. So I have to agree with my receiving station what mode we want to use. Works really well over FM analog repeaters. We practice that all the time in the Philadelphia area. Severe weather report, standard ICS 213 emergency. This is just some fake stuff that I've set up. Spreadsheets, here's all the areas capable repeaters in the greater Philadelphia area. If I sent this with a typical mode on 2 meters FM, I'm just looking at this, it would take me maybe 5 seconds to send this whole thing. The whole thing. The American Red Cross, if I look at custom forms, here are all of these. So for emergency purposes, these are the kind of standard forms we would likely need to send, whether it's American Red Cross or ICS or the Mars forms. Here's even ARRL radiogram, all kinds of stuff. FLAMP, I mentioned, has its own checksum. Yeah, I'm going to skip some of this because it's getting late. FLAMP. So Ron and I are part of what's called the Pennsylvania NBEMS net on 80 meters. And we meet 7:30 in the morning, Sunday. If you get up early enough, you'll hear us. Frequency, 3583, upper sideband. Now, what do I mean by that? You set your VFO to 3583. The sounds are about 1500 hertz, so the actual RF is 3583 plus 1.5 kilohertz. You'd see on a spectrum analyzer, our signals are at 3584.5. The mode we usually use on HF single sideband, Thor 22. I played that last month for you. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, it's really pretty. MFSK 32, another easy to send mode, pretty fast. It's about 120 words a minute. And there's some others. On 80 meters, I'll hear anyone more than 10 miles and less than 300 miles. On a low, simple, cheap 80 meter dipole, 20 feet off the ground, I'll hear everybody at 8 in the morning. I get stations checking into the net that are 2 watts, 5 watts, QRP, hear them easily. The Pennsylvania NBEMS, we now have a group site. Ron set this up, and it's fantastic. We get all kinds of comments about the propagation. You can share all kinds of information. So it's been nice to have this I/O group. Stations check in first if they have emergencies, QRP, and any EOCs. We usually get 1 or 2 EOCs checking in. It's a little harder with COVID because often we're not allowed, in there. Get a lot of QRPs, portable stations. Once in a while there's some sort of emergency or a sample emergency. Western Pennsylvania, Central Pennsylvania, Eastern Pennsylvania. We take Pennsylvania first. Then we look at regions 1, 2, and so on. And by the end of the net, we often will have 80 stations checking in. It's like, as a net control, man, my fingers are tired typing. We used to get stations checking in from Canada, Wisconsin, and Florida. But 80 meters in the morning isn't quite as, wait till the solar cycle comes back. Group email address. So here's an example of, here's a list of stations that have checked into the Pennsylvania 80 meter net in the last 2 years or so. And you see there are a lot of stations in the southeast. Well, that's where the population is. But scattered around, I know K3CC is our sole station up here in the hinterland, Skip. We get quite a few stations in the Pittsburgh area. Kind of amazing. We often send sample traffic just for practice. I often send a spreadsheet or an ICS form or anything we want for practice. Here are the other nets, and I asked if you guys knew the New Jersey net is run by KC2VUT, Bill. Sunday, 9:30, a little more civil time, 3584.5, and again, that's the VFO dial frequencies. And Bill usually gets about 1 or 2 dozen stations all over New Jersey, and all over actually the Mid-Atlantic area. And again, it's just a practice net, but There is a New Jersey Central, I forget where their central headquarters is, and I think they have a HF rig there too. I forgot, Bill let us know. There's the New York Net. That's Saturdays at 8 o'clock. A lot of us are available Saturdays and not Sundays, so they usually get a good crowd there. And if you really like the morning up in New England, the New Hampshire Digital Net's about 7 o'clock now. They really take check-ins before 7 o'clock. They just don't announce it. And so there's a lot of HF nets where you can gain practice. Of course, this is all upper sideband. We don't do anything in lower sideband. Time for a coffee break. Let me stop sharing. There we go. So it's almost Quaker midnight. So I said, I got to finish by 9 o'clock. So it worked better than I thought it would, actually, because Ron and I practiced. And Ron's a superb operator. He's very experienced, very cool. I get nervous. So.
Really great presentation. And Jim, thank you, or Ron rather, thank you very much. Okay, for all the good work in terms of practicing and great questions and good discussion as well too. So
the best question I had was, can you use an old radio on a crummy, old computer? Yes. So the two radios that I just demonstrated here, 2-meter simplex. Granted, I only went 10 feet. An ICOM 746, that's 15 years old, and a Kenwood D700 dual bander, that's about 20 years old. So do you need the latest, greatest radio with a built-in sound card that costs $1,500? No. It's nice to have it to play with, but no, you don't need fancy stuff. Do you need a fancy sound card? No. One of my sound cards, here's one of my sound cards. You see that? I think that was on Amazon for $5. It works. Why? Well, because usually these sounds are very simple, mid-frequency sounds. It's not like reproducing symphonic music. And the speed of them isn't terribly high. I could use that little $5 sound card for Vara. Now, the limit is if we want to try it through a repeater. A repeater doesn't like 6 kilohertz audio, right? And if you want to try this on a repeater, absolutely get the repeater owner's permission, or you're really in big doo-doo, because a lot of repeater owners don't want to hear this, diddly-diddly sound on their machine. Of course, that makes sense.
Barry,
yes.
Just the 146.61 repeater is available. You need not ask. And the PL is 141.3.
Where is it physically?
It's on Garrett Mountain. It's on the eastern face of Garrett Mountain, and basically it's in Woodland Park, but basically it faces over Clifton. And
so what kind of radius would it have on 2 meters? 50 miles?
In certain directions, 50 miles easily.
About 80 miles south for you, Barry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the wrong side of the mountain, really, for you, because the way Garrett Mountain's structured, it's got a double ridge. It's parallel, and it's on the eastern facing one. So for those who remember the old 6.1 Land Rover's repeater, it was on the western side of the hill, and that's actually higher. The eastern side of the hill its peak is a little lower. So.
I lived in Flagstaff, Arizona for a year and then a couple summers, and there was a repeater up on Navajo Mountain, so it's up at 12,000 feet, and that had a radius of about 200 miles. 200 miles. Well,
I know. Yeah,
it's at 12,000 feet, so and it's nice dry air where 2 meters doesn't get absorbed. So it's kind of fun with an HT to work someone else with an HT, and you're 100 miles apart.
Yeah, Barry, I wanted to ask you, you said Vara is not snoopable.
Correct.
How does that meet the legal muster for observability?
That's one of the questions. But all of the email messages are available on the internet. If you go to an internet website, you can read everything. And the gateway is really responsible for what goes through the gateway. Okay. So 2 good friends of mine are gateway operators. And they said, yeah, they pretty regularly check what's actually the text of the message. So it's not a business or it's not, it's up to the gateway operator to keep tabs on what are the messages going through. So the question about legality, well, like if you send a binary file or something, I can't read the text on my computer monitor. Can't do that. It's not really that it's encrypted. It's not trying to hide it, but it's using a method where it's continually changing gears and it's a handshaking back and forth. So you don't want to waste time letting everyone else read and see what's actually the data going through.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I'm explaining it well, but
no,
it's
a good explanation. I think that, you know, that kind of what I'll call availability of inspection is a good precedent to set, because, you know, there are a lot of us who do, let's say, ardent mesh and others. And, you know, to be honest, I'm not operating without HTTPS. Sorry. I don't care what the FCC says. Go pound sand.
Yeah.
Yeah, Barry, you said something that's very important that changed my thinking about a few things. When you said sending data in a form is more efficient than using a cell phone. And the reason that changed my thinking is that I had been saying to my Aries group that unless you have both a telephone failure and an internet failure, you don't have a true communications failure. But you're right in this case, that even if you have cell phone service and you have a lot of data to send in a form, this is a sensible way to do it.
Yeah, the way how do I say this? For the last couple of years, when we've been deployed on real emergencies or drills, we always use FLAMP because it's the most efficient way to send a long, like a governor's request to, we practice every 2 years what we call the Limerick drill. It's a nuclear generating plant. We practice, you know, sending evacuation and radioactive decay, you know, all this kind of stuff, technical stuff that we'd never say by voice. That would scare the public. But we're sending a lot of information in a short amount of time from a central location, the EOC, the county government, to, let's say, 25 townships, all that are within 10-mile zone of this nuclear plant. So the people at the plant, you know, are relaying the information to the governor's office. Then it goes out maybe to the counties. How do the individual townships learn what's the status? They learn through us, ham radio operators, or whatever mechanism they have, the internet, county phones, fax machines. And it was funny, well, it's not so funny, but I was stationed at a township building about 10 miles from Limerick, the plant, and I got the message on 2 meters by NBEMS, FLDIGI. I had my printer there. I printed it out, you know, ripped it off, handed it to the guy, and he said, "Whoa, what's this?" I said, "Here's one of the messages I got." He said, "I didn't even get this yet on my cell phone." And he went over to look at their fax machine, and he wasn't getting any faxes at all. So he said, "Why aren't I getting faxes?" I said, "I have nothing to do with that. I'm just a ham radio volunteer here." So he called the county. They had the wrong number for his fax machine because they changed the number and they didn't let the county know. I mean, there are 100 reasons why communications fail. That's why we do these drills. And then there was another funny one where when I come in, I always have, you know, the ham radio, the 2-meter 440, you know, a little laptop, a little SignalLink or something, and I always bring a 12-volt battery, a marine battery, and I put that under the table. And so I run on 120 AC, but I have this little, you know, jumper thing where if I lose AC power, it switches to my gel cell. So I had a PEMA representative, and he comes over to me, he says, "This is pretty impressive." I said, "Well, thank you." He said, "But what if you lost AC power?" I said, "Well, here's my AC cord. It's plugged into the wall over there. Unplug it yourself and see what happens." So he unplugs it. My radio switches to the battery, and I'm still getting the messages. He said, "Now I'm really impressed." That was like, I lucked out. It worked. So, you know, my battery would last maybe 3 or 4 or 5 hours, not, 3 weeks, but he was impressed. We were also at a location that was 10.1 miles from Limerick's plant, from the stacks. And we got the notice that anyone within the 10-mile zone should evacuate. I mean, as a drill message, not really. They wanted to evacuate the EOC staffs and all these township buildings out to a location greater than 10 miles away, just as a drill to see if we could do it. Now, the ham operators, it took us 10 minutes to gather our gear, put it in a car, and we go 10 miles to the south or something. So I look at the EOC township guy, he's the fire chief, and I said, "Shouldn't we evacuate?" He said, "No, we're 10.1 miles. I said, "Oh, you really feel safe with that extra tenth of a mile?" He said, No, we're not within 10 miles. We're 10.1. So I looked at him, and I know him pretty well, and I said, well, what if the wind were blowing in our direction? Wouldn't that worry you? He said, no, not really. I said, do you know how to turn off the the HVAC system so we're not drawing air in from the outside? He said, no. I thought, what's the weak link? The weak link might be something stupid like, how do you turn the air off in your own setup, even if you don't evacuate? So
Barry,
these drills are good.
The weak link is the fire guy.
Well, he's my boss when I'm there, right?
Yeah,
I'm the volunteer.
But if he doesn't have somebody on his staff who knows how to manage critical systems, such as, the HVAC.
I could think that, but I'm not going to tell him.
No, I understand.
So sometimes ham radio operators get into trouble by doing something we're not qualified to do. Now, I was once on a drill, and I was out in New Jersey on the road, and I was told, get out of my car and stop traffic from going this way. And I said, no way. I'm not licensed to go hold up my hands and stop traffic. You want someone to do that, you call the local police. I'm a radio operator, and I'm not going to stop traffic. And then we got into a long discussion about that, because I'm not legally allowed to do that, first of all. Let's get back to NBEMS. Has anyone ever operated FLDIGI? Yeah, Carl, Tom. I mean, you can use it for non-emergency. I mean, it's great. It'll do PSK, it'll do Thor, it'll do RTTY. I even use FLDIGI for CW. I mean, I get criticized for it, but I like to type rather than send with my hand key. So I've had great conversations in CW with FLDIGI. And actually, I can copy CW in my head, but it copies well-sent CW faster than I can. I lose it at about 30 words a minute. FLDIGI's good up to about 40, 50 words a minute. Ed, anything else?
I think we're pretty good here, and we're just about, actually we are.
Just about Quaker Midnight, yeah.
We are at the hour, so, I guess any last questions here, okay, before?
Yeah, W2JC.
W2JC, over to you.
Yeah, Barry, could you
Show
say
yourself.
something? Sorry?
Show yourself.
Camera's not on.
Okay.
Could you give us a little bit of a rundown on that green square on the right-hand side of the Vara thing? And
oh, yeah. As you receive the message, the greens keep going by. So I know when it gets close to the end, the message is almost there.
No,
it's sort of like
the one where there's an X or
the constellation.
Oh. That confused me for about a year because I couldn't understand it. So each of the different modes has a different checkerboard. And like the simplest would be like RTTY signal is 2, D, 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 D. Now, they don't use RTTY, but RTTY would have like a checkerboard, 2 pieces, D, 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 D. If you have 4, it might be 4 modulation signatures, like 4 PSK or something. So as you get more and more complicated structures in the modulation, the checkerboard gets more and more complicated until you get to this 256 quantum. Let me see if I can bring it up again. Oh, I closed it. Let me bring up.
Yeah, but this is difficult. Jim, if you want to know about that, ask Gordon about QAM sometime, because that's sort of what you're seeing is this advanced modulation.
It's a combination of phase shift and amplitude shift. I can
right. Actually, you actually had a really nice diagram before where you showed.
Oh, that's right. I have a permanent picture. Yeah, let me do that. That's right.
Yeah,
I forgot.
Because, I mean, let's keep in mind that when you do, if you get to 32 QAM on VHF radio, that's similar to what happens in your cell phone or your DSL modem or your cable modem. The difference is that you have a series of those carriers discretely in the spectrum that are then aggregated, and each carrier can be manipulated up to 32 QAM or higher or lower, depending on what the impairment is at that specific piece of the spectrum.
All right, so we're really into the weeds here.
Oh, yes.
Different modulation structures might have 1 carrier, 2 carriers, 16. So when you get more and more complicated, sounds, and each sound is individually, shifting, this checkerboard shows sort of like if a data point falls in the middle of this checkerboard, it's a certain, so many bits this way and this way, it can be translated into, useful data. If some of these dots are appearing right on the edge of one square or another, then you're losing some of the modulation structure. It's like a little, static, lost a couple of characters here and there. This one was recorded on FM, where I'm not dealing with, multipath and lightning hits on 80 meters and everything. So even though I was on narrow FM, I was already up to gear 11, which I think is the highest gear. So you can't send any faster information with Vara than you have the bandwidth to do it in. And this does it within about 2.5 kilohertz worth of space. So it's fun to watch this, because I know if this gets more complicated, I'm gearing up. 5th gear, 6th gear, 8th gear, 10th gear, and then it stops because it can't go any faster. If I went to Vara wide, and I actually could have done that tonight, you can even ramp up to even faster gears. It's sort of like saying if I have a 20-speed bike, depending on my riding conditions, I can get into gear 10, 12, 14, 16, Gives you a little more flexibility if the software, now I'm not doing it, the software is doing it. So yeah, that was a good question. Also, this TX delay, this down here, do you see where I'm pointing, TX delay? 170 milliseconds. Well, that's not through a repeater. That was one signal link to another, and I had the signal links turned down to about delay of 7 o'clock. So this isn't a repeater. But they're 15-year-old radios, so it takes the radio a little while to switch transmit, receive, transmit, receive. Whatever is the slowest part of your station, that's going to determine the link speed. But that's what the handshaking is all about. During the handshaking at the beginning, diddly-dee, 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 they can sort of figure out if we can talk back and forth. I had one station just a couple of nights ago that instead of being on the repeater frequency, nudged the dial inadvertently, and it was like 2 kilohertz high. And when I heard the sounds, I knew they were being distorted, but we didn't know why. So when we came back with a microphone, I said, I'm not getting a link to you because I can hear what you're sending to me is just gibberish. It doesn't make sense. He said, let me look. Oh, I bumped the VFO dial. I was like, yeah, well, can't do that on FM. So he was like 2 or 3 kilohertz off the repeater frequency. All right, it's 5 minutes past.
Any other questions here? Just maybe one or two last ones. Jim,
and is this still being recorded?
Yeah. Yes.
I was just going to say,
okay.
that would be good for emergency purposes to use your memory channels.
Yes. The other thing we find, and it's just operator, on many radios, to use the data port in the back, you have to be in FM data mode. I think all the Yaesu radios are like that. But if you want to use your microphone, you have to be in FM mode, meaning FM voice phone. And they forget to toggle back and forth. So they pick up the mic and start talking, and all we see is a carrier. And we come back and say, hey, there's no modulation. Well, wait a minute, I'm talking, what? They're forgetting. So some of the radios are smart enough that they don't have to do that. Some, I better not criticize any one brand.
I wanted to say one thing about Vara FM.
Carl, you've got the last word.
Thank you, Ed. Maybe I shouldn't have. But one other point is that with Vara FM, any Vara FM station can be a Vara FM repeater. So you can, if one guy in the community has a real high antenna, they can serve as a repeater for everybody else.
I didn't show that slide. That's I've got to add that to my talk. You're right. So where are we here? FM peer-to-peer. So right here. Do you guys still see this? Is it live?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So this is a WinLink station, right? K3EUI, or direct. I could say via, and I could put a repeater person in here. So we could actually, So we can actually go, we've tried this. I'm not expert at this. But we can try sending a signal from me through a digipeater of someone to someone else. And I think it allows for 2 hops. We haven't tried that much, but it's hard enough through an FM analog voice repeater. But when we get signals, from simplex, one to another, like Pony Express, you need to practice that. Good
Barry,
point. Good point.
Thank you so much for a great, great evening. I think this has been, I've just learned tons here tonight, and I hope, everyone else has as well. Barry, your email address, okay, for anyone who has any questions post the session.